At precisely 7:15 in the morning, a sharp, insistent pounding on my front door jolted me awake, slicing through the serene early hours like an alarm siren in a deserted town. The sudden noise made my heart pound faster than any alarm clock ever could. I stumbled down the hallway, still groggy, my hair a mess, my t-shirt on inside out. As soon as I swung the door open, a wave of unease rippled through me. Standing on my little welcome mat was a petite woman in a perfectly tailored navy blazer, clutching a clipboard in her right hand. Her stern expression made it clear she was not there to deliver good news. "Good morning. I'm Karen Lloyd, president of the Clearwater Trails Homeowners Association," she announced crisply, her manner polite yet chilling. "I'm here regarding a violation." She paused, letting the word hang in the air long enough to make me feel like I'd actually committed a crime. According to our newly updated community guidelines, Section 7, Subsection 3, use of the Clearwater Trails community pool is restricted to HOA members and their immediate families. I have reason to believe you've been accessing it without approval. I blinked, trying to banish the last remnants of fatigue. "My name is Miles Carter. My husband Jake and I moved here 3 months ago, excited at the prospect of settling into a peaceful suburban neighborhood. One of Clearwater Trail's biggest attractions was the community pool. The development's brochure boasted it was open to all residents, a place to relax under the summer sun. And yet, here was the HOA president herself, glaring at me like I was an intruder. I studied Karen Lloyd's posture. She was gripping the clipboard like a judge's gavel. Her stance radiated authority. Despite her petite frame, her gaze carried the gravity of someone accustomed to controlling every situation. "You're saying I can't use the pool?" I asked, startled. I read the original HOA handbook we got at closing, and it explicitly stated the pool was a shared amenity for all residents of Clearwater Trails. It didn't say anything about paying extra or needing special approval. Karen gave a thin smile, as if I had just confirmed her low expectations. "We updated the bylaws, Mr. Carter. The new rule went into effect last month. All homeowners were notified through the HOA email list. The revised guidelines state that only registered, fully paid HOA members and their dependents may use the pool. Any other use constitutes a violation." She raised her clipboard, tapping her index finger on one of the pages, "which is why I've come to impose the appropriate fine. $500. And if you continue using the pool without paying for the new membership tier or resolving this violation, the fines could escalate. We may pursue legal action if necessary." A spark of indignation flared inside me. I had never received any such email or update. I checked my work emails daily, making it unlikely I missed anything major. "I looked at the HOA website just last week and saw no mention of extra fees," I said, doing my best to remain courteous. "Are you sure this was communicated properly?" Karen's expression hardened. "I assure you, we operate with the utmost diligence. If you didn't see the email, that's unfortunate, but it doesn't nullify the rule. I'm merely here to enforce community standards." She handed me a bright orange violation notice, complete with words like penalty and delinquency. "You have 2 weeks to pay the fine and enroll in our upgraded pool membership if you still want to swim. Otherwise, refrain from using the pool entirely." With that, she offered a curt nod, pivoted on her sensible heels, and strode down my driveway. Each step she took away from me seemed to stoke my anger further, as if she'd left a cloud of arrogance hanging in the air. I shut the door, taking a shaky breath, my pulse hammering in my neck. Had she really just shown up at my house to levy a fine for using an amenity we believed was our basic right? Jake, my husband, must have heard the commotion. He shuffled into the living room, hair still disheveled from sleep. "Who was that?" he asked, yawning. "Karen Lloyd, the queen of this HOA," I said, letting my frustration show. "Apparently we owe $500 for unauthorized use of the pool. She claims there's some new membership fee, says there was an email about an updated bylaw that restricts access. Jake cocked his head. That's absurd. I don't recall seeing anything about new pool rules, either by mail or email, he said, rummaging through the documents on our coffee table, which still included leftover brochures from our move-in day. This neighborhood was advertised as having a free pool for residents. Remember the promotional brochure? He was right. When we'd been house hunting, Clearwater Trail's large, pristine community pool was a huge draw. My mother used to say that if you have access to a good pool, make use of it, especially in the blazing heat of summer. It felt ridiculous to pay extra membership fees on top of the HOA dues. Still, amid the frustration, I also noted a certain irony. Jake happens to be a state recreation inspector. He travels around ensuring compliance, safety, and fair access at both public and semi-public facilities, including pools. Karen might have paused if she had known whom she was issuing her legal threats against. Jake must have read my mind because he gave me a knowing smile. "Let's not wave my job in her face just yet," he said gently. "We should gather facts first, then decide on our next move." I nodded, grateful for his level-headedness. I nearly wanted to storm into the HOA office, demanding proof that I'd never gotten any notice, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Right," I agreed. "We'll check the HOA website again, see if there's a hidden page about the membership or something in their meeting minutes." 2. Digging for online evidence. That whole morning, the two of us sat at our kitchen table, each with our laptop. I combed through the official Clearwater Trails HOA site, every single tab and subpage. Nothing. No sign of any new pool membership fee, nor any mention of restricting resident access, no posted announcement of an email about updated rules. The only reference to the pool still described it as a community amenity open to all residents, exactly like before. Jake checked his spam folder. Still nothing. We also looked through old meeting minutes the HOA had posted, most from last year, dealing with budget allocations for pool maintenance. None of it was unusual. Could it be Karen is just making up her own rules? I half joked, half seriously. Jake shrugged. Sometimes HOA boards do strange things. Technically, they can pass new guidelines if they follow proper voting procedures, but that usually involves formal notification. Also, it can't conflict with the original covenants. Let's call the HOA office. I dialed the number on the site. After a few minutes on hold, a timid-sounding receptionist picked up. She confirmed that the pool bylaw had been updated, but sounded reluctant to elaborate. "Ms. Lloyd is in charge of enforcement," she said, voice trembling slightly. "If you want details, you can attend the next HOA meeting, Tuesday evening next week." I thanked her, then hung up, uneasy at how nervous she sounded. Later that day, Jake and I walked by the pool to see if any official notice had been posted. The gate was locked, fitted with a brand new padlock we hadn't seen before. A small sign read, "Pool access restricted to approved residents. Contact the HOA for membership details." My anger flared. The idea that an amenity we believed was ours by right was now sealed behind a paywall felt outrageous. 3. Stories from our neighbors. On our way home, we spotted a tall 40-something woman jogging across the street toward us, her hair in a short ponytail. She waved in a friendly way. "Hi there, I'm Jenna Reeves, your neighbor, across the street. I saw Karen leaving your driveway this morning. Let me guess, she fined you for using the pool?" My eyes widened. "Yes, she did. $500 if we don't stop or pay some new membership fee. That happened to you too?" She sighed and shook her head. "Not exactly the same. Last year she tried to fine me for letting guests swim outside the posted hours, except there was no posted schedule. I fought it, and eventually it disappeared, but only after a bunch of stress. We invited Jenna to chat for a few minutes by our front door. She clutched a small water bottle, looking genuinely concerned. Karen's been HOA president for 4 years. At first it was about yard aesthetics, but then she began overstepping, imposing mandatory mailbox designs, restricting holiday decorations, and slapping random fees on people. She has a few allies on the board, but she's not very popular, and she's really determined to control the pool. "I'm all the pool?" Jake asked, baffled. Jenna shrugged. "Rumor has it she wants to upgrade it into something more exclusive. She claims it'll help property values, but people also say she has connections to private investors who might buy partial ownership of the pool area. Nobody really knows. She keeps things hush." My annoyance deepened. Maybe there was indeed a hidden agenda to privatize the pool. Jake gave me a glance that suggested we were on the right track investigating. "We plan to go to the next HOA meeting," I told Jenna. "We'll confront her about the lack of transparency." She nodded. "I'll be there too. Trust me, many neighbors are fed up. They're just scared she'll retaliate with fines or legal threats. Some would rather pay than fight." After Jenna left, Jake and I spent the afternoon gathering documents. The original bylaws from our closing packet, screenshots of the HOA website proving it never mentioned new membership fees, and the bright orange citation Karen had given us. We also listed all the questions we planned to ask at the upcoming meeting. In the following days, I tried to focus on my job, writing marketing content from home, but kept finding my thoughts drifting. Every time I looked out the window, I'd see the sign near the pool, almost mocking me. I used to go swimming 3 times a week. Now, it was under lock and key. Jake, who usually traveled for site inspections, postponed a trip so we could address our HOA predicament together. 4. Showdown at the HOA meeting. At last, Tuesday evening arrived. I felt a mix of nervousness and excitement, as if I were heading into a debate or confrontation. The HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. at our small community center. We left at 6:30, armed with documents, and carpooled with Jenna. The community center was modest, a single-story building with a few meeting rooms. In the main room, about a dozen chairs were arranged facing a long table, where a tall man in a sweater vest was setting up a microphone and some papers. Karen sat in the center, clad in yet another immaculate blazer, her face masked with polite composure. We took seats in the second row. A handful of other neighbors trickled in, a few older folks sat quietly with small notepads, and 1 or 2 shot me sympathetic looks. Exactly at 7 p.m., the tall man, introduced by Karen as Peter Reynolds, the HOA secretary, started reading the agenda. Landscaping budgets, repainting the neighborhood sign, scheduling the upcoming barbecue. My impatience surged until he finally reached Item 4, the discussion regarding unauthorized pool usage. Karen cleared her throat and leaned into the mic. "We have an incident involving Mr. Miles Carter," she said. "He has been using the community pool without paying the newly established membership fee. This is a serious matter that undermines the integrity of our system." I raised my hand, my heart pounding. "I'd like to respond," I said. Karen pursed her lips but gave a curt nod. Stepping up to the mic, I tried to keep my voice steady. First of all, I was never informed of any so-called membership fee. The original HOA bylaws say the pool is a community amenity for all residents. I checked the website, my spam folder, everything. I found no email. How exactly was I supposed to know about this? Karen maintained her rigid composure. "It was posted online and an email was sent. Perhaps you overlooked it." "That's not correct," I replied, holding up a printout. "Here are screenshots of every HOA website update over the past 2 months, automatically archived. There's no mention of restricting the pool or imposing an extra fee. I'd like to know exactly when this rule was passed and by what procedure. Did homeowners get a vote, or was this decided behind closed doors?" A ripple of whispers spread across the room. An older man at the back stood. "Name's Todd Nelson. I've lived here since the development was first built," he said. "I never heard about new pool fees. When was this so-called vote?" Karen's face twitched in annoyance, though she tried to hide it. The board is empowered to enact measures for the common good, particularly for maintenance expenses and liability issues, she said. We recognized a need to limit users to those paying these costs. I stifled a laugh. Liability? We all pay HOA dues, presumably to cover the pool's maintenance. Why an extra membership fee? Does anyone here recall receiving official notice about a new fee? Several people shook their heads. Jenna raised her hand, echoing my question. A young couple in the front looked baffled, flipping through some pamphlets. Peter Reynolds shuffled his papers, looking uneasy. Well, maybe the communication got lost somewhere, he mumbled. Karen took the mic again. Regardless, a rule is a rule, and Mr. Carter has broken it. The fine stands. The board will discuss the membership requirement in a closed session and clarify how best to implement it going forward. That's all. With that, she effectively shut down discussion. The crowd murmured in discontent. Todd gave me a supportive thumbs up as I returned to my seat, my frustration mounting. When the meeting ended about half an hour later, small clusters of neighbors lingered, whispering to one another. Karen quickly packed her papers and left, ignoring me. Jake and I walked outside, tension simmering. Todd caught us in the parking lot. "Nice job calling her out," he said in a gruff but friendly voice. "This used to be a pleasant place. Karen's turned it into her personal fiefdom." He explained how she often targeted newer residents with obscure violations because they didn't know all the rules, hoping they'd just pay up or keep quiet. It strengthened my resolve. "I won't give up," I said, jaw clenched. "It's not just about doing laps. It's the principle." Jake nodded. "If she's enforcing a rule that isn't legitimate or rewriting covenants illegally, we can push back, maybe get the city involved. But let's gather more evidence first." 5. Escalation and seeking legal help. Over the next few days, things heated up. Bright orange notices continued appearing on our mailbox, each labeling me as still in non-compliance with the pool rule, even though I hadn't set foot in it since Karen's ultimatum. One notice threatened that if I didn't pay within 10 days, the fine would jump to $700. If I tried to use the pool again, it added, further legal measures might be taken. Seeing my frustration, Jake insisted we talk to a lawyer. I hesitated. Attorneys can be expensive, but the situation felt serious. We found Monica White, a local lawyer specializing in HOA disputes. Over the phone, she was brisk and confident. "I've handled similar cases where an overbearing board invents rules. The key is whether they followed proper procedures. If they didn't, you can challenge it." We set up a consultation. Jake delayed a work trip to join me. Monica was a short woman with sharp eyes, seated behind a tidy desk stacked with case files. "Tell me everything," she said, and we did. About the fine, the newly locked gate, the alleged membership policy that no one else seemed to know about. She jotted down notes throughout. When we finished, she sat back. "From what you describe, it sounds like Miss Lloyd is bypassing normal voting procedures and using the HOA's name to enforce her own agenda. If you can prove the community was never properly notified or given a chance to vote, that's a strong case. Also, if the original covenants guarantee open pool access to all residents, she can't just override that single-handedly. In many states, that's considered a contractual right. You can't revoke it without a supermajority or formal amendment." I exhaled, relieved. "So, we have a good chance of fighting it?" "Absolutely," Monica said. "Keep all the notices she sends. It'll help if other neighbors share similar stories. The more evidence, the stronger your position." Later that day, I walked the neighborhood, talking to people about their experiences. Several said Karen had attempted to collect small pool fees in the past, for guests or holiday weekends. Many had grudgingly paid rather than face conflict. Others were barred from bringing elderly relatives to swim. Over and over, the story was the same. No official votes or formal bylaw amendments, just Karen's edicts backed by threats of fines. Meanwhile, Jake quietly contacted a colleague at the state recreation department to check local regulations. Yes, typically, if a pool is designated as a shared amenity in the original development plans, his colleague said, The HOA can't abruptly change it to a private pay-to-play club without going through a legitimate process. If you suspect wrongdoing, you can escalate it to the county or state level. I had a small, almost guilty sense of satisfaction, imagining Karen's reaction if she discovered Jake's official role. But we chose not to reveal that yet. We wanted to see if she'd escalate further. Sure enough, she did. One morning, I woke up to find a giant red sign planted in my front yard. Pool access denied. Non-compliant resident. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was blatant public shaming. Furious, I yanked the sign out of the grass and stormed over to the HOA office, a small building near the subdivision entrance. I intended to confront Karen in person, but only the timid receptionist was there. She said Ms. Lloyd was busy and not seeing visitors. Fed up, I left a message. This is unacceptable. You can't publicly shame a homeowner over a dispute you fabricated. Then I slammed the door as I left. 6. A growing sense of community. Rather than backing down, we organized a small group of neighbors at our house each week, including Jenna and Todd, to share stories. Todd mentioned Karen had changed the pool gate locks multiple times, each time demanding a fee for anyone who wanted a new key. Jenna said rumors persisted that some of the extra membership money might be going to a side fund for enhancements or possibly lining Karen's pockets. Another rumor said she aimed to sell partial control of the pool to a private developer. The more we learned, the more determined we became to stop it. About a week later, the HOA announced a special meeting to finalize the new membership policy. Word spread quickly, and far more people than usual planned to attend. The community center was crowded, around 30 people, compared to the usual handful. Karen and her fellow board members, including Peter Reynolds, sat at the long table. She began with a speech about rampant pool abuse by outsiders, insisting the membership fee was about safety. The dramatic tone struck me as laughable. Once she stopped, discontented voices rose en masse. Jenna demanded evidence of supposed intruders. Todd denounced the random nature of the new fees. Residents complained about locked gates and threatened fines. Karen tried banging a little wooden gavel to restore order, but people were done staying silent. Jake stepped forward. "I have a point to raise," he said. "My name's Jake Carter, husband of Miles. I happen to be a state recreation inspector, so I'm familiar with established amenities in both public and private communities. If this pool was originally designated for all Clearwater Trails residents in the recorded documents, you can't just exclude half of them without going through the proper channels, often a supermajority vote or a formal amendment." The room hushed. Karen's eyes flickered with alarm. "That's irrelevant," she snapped. "The board has full authority to adjust safety guidelines." Jake shook his head calmly. "Guidelines, yes, but you can't enact sweeping changes that violate your community's foundational covenants or state regulations. If it's found that you're rewriting rules illegally, the HOA can face legal repercussions." Sensing the room's shifting momentum, I stood and addressed the group. "No one here wants the pool to be unsafe. But Karen singled me out, fined me, and publicly shamed me without proper notice. Now many of you have gone through the same thing. This new membership fee appeared out of nowhere. Doesn't that alarm you?" A wave of agreement spread through the crowd. Andrew Martin, a fairly new resident who worked in environmental design, said he'd uncovered county records identifying the pool as common property for the entire subdivision, not as a private club. He even hinted there was evidence of outside investors discussing partial ownership. The hush that fell was electric. Karen tried to retort, claiming it was only an exploratory idea with no actual plan to shut residents out. But Peter Reynolds, the board secretary, turned to Karen and quietly said into the microphone, "Karen, you told me these were minor expansions, not that we'd be forcing half the neighborhood out." His words unleashed a storm of condemnation from everyone else. A chorus of residents demanded Karen's resignation. She banged her little gavel, shouting for order. But the tide had turned. Todd declared that if the board continued backing her, they would be complicit in potential fraud. I stood there, heart pounding, realizing we'd reached a critical tipping point. Karen clenched the mic. "These accusations are baseless," she snarled, "and it's disgraceful that you'd sabotage community improvements." But Monica, our attorney, stepped forward with documents in hand. "This isn't sabotage, it's accountability," she said firmly. "We have enough evidence to challenge these board decisions in court if needed. The law stands on the side of preserving homeowners' original, documented rights. Drastic changes must follow legal procedure." Chaos erupted, with people shouting for Karen to be removed immediately. Even some of her former supporters seemed taken aback by the revelations. Eventually, Peter called for an emergency motion. The residents in attendance voted overwhelmingly to hold a recall election within a week and to freeze all new pool policies and fees until that time. Karen protested bitterly, but several board members abandoned her stance. The meeting ended amid an uproar. As we left the building, a group of neighbors surrounded us, offering thanks and relief. Todd gave me a nod. "If this board tries to back her any longer, they'll be confirming their involvement," he growled. We all knew Karen wouldn't just surrender, but at least we'd forced a democratic process. 7. The final showdown and the end of the saga. In the days that followed, I got a flood of supportive emails from neighbors, thanking Jake and me for exposing Karen's scheme. A small faction still believed her claims about preserving property values, but the majority had had enough of her secrecy and intimidation. When the recall vote day arrived, the atmosphere felt almost festive. People turned out in large numbers, many bringing proxy votes from absent neighbors. During the tense counting, Peter tallied the ballots one by one. The room fell silent as he announced the result. Karen Lloyd was removed from her position as HOA president by a sizable margin. Cheers and applause broke out. Some people simply sighed in relief. Karen, sitting at the front with a stony expression, stood up, glared around the room, and stalked out without a word. It was a decisive outcome. A new interim board took over, promising more transparency. They immediately removed any padlocks at the pool, canceled the so-called membership fees, and initiated a full audit of HOA finances. They also pledged to terminate any negotiations with private investors seeking to convert the pool into a high-priced club. A week later, I found myself standing at the pool's edge, gazing at the calm, sparkling water. The padlock was gone, replaced by a simple shared code for all residents. Children splashed happily. An older couple floated leisurely. The space felt like it had returned to what was promised in the beginning, a true community amenity. Jake, dressed in cargo shorts and sporting a grin, was relaxing on a lounge chair, looking over some recreation pamphlets. I slipped into the shallow end, letting the cool water envelop me, feeling a tremendous sense of relief and gratitude. Eventually, word went around that Karen had moved out about a month after her recall. People joked she might resurface somewhere else, banning backyard cookouts or holiday lights. But it no longer mattered. Clearwater trails belonged to the people who lived here, and we'd reclaim the pool that was always meant for everyone. That Sunday evening, Jake and I hosted a small gathering by the pool. Jenna brought homemade lemonade. Todd set up a portable grill to make hamburgers near the fence. Kids shouted, "Marco Polo!" and new neighbors introduced themselves, glad the controversy was behind us. People laughed about Karen's garish orange notices. Ironically, they had galvanized the community in shared indignation. At one point, I set aside my paper plate, simply observing the shimmering water, folks chatting companionably, the sun descending in golden light. This, I realized, was the heart of any true neighborhood: togetherness, fairness, and open, shared spaces without fear of fines or intimidation. I thought back to the day we first toured the development, how I'd pictured early morning laps in the pool. That sense of tranquility was ours again. Jake caught my eye from across the pool, raising his glass of lemonade in a silent toast. I smiled, recalling how Karen had had no idea my husband was literally a state inspector for recreational facilities. Call it poetic justice. We never even fully deployed that fact. Karen's own overreach was incriminating enough. By the time dusk rolled in, folks were cleaning up their dishes and waving goodbye with genuine warmth. Jenna gave me a quick hug. "None of this would have happened if you and Jake hadn't stood your ground," she said. Todd joined in. "Absolutely. You took the first swing, and we're all grateful." I felt a rush of humility. We hadn't acted alone. Neighbors had come together to topple Karen's rule. Night settled over Clearwater trails, and I lingered by the pool a bit longer, listening to the gentle slosh of water against the edges. My thoughts drifted back to the day I discovered the place, how the promise of peaceful mornings in the pool was a big part of why we moved here. That peace was truly ours once more. We headed home, where Jake brewed a pot of chamomile tea for a calming end to the day. I sank into the couch, releasing all the tension of the past weeks. Our conflict with Karen had tested my patience and sense of justice, but ultimately I found community, discovered hidden allies in my neighbors, and proved that standing up to bullying, no matter how trivial or small it seems, can absolutely make a difference. The next morning, I woke early, feeling an unfamiliar lightness. I padded into the kitchen, made coffee, then stepped outside to watch the sunrise. Warm rays bathed our cul-de-sac in an almost gentle glow, and a breeze rustled the trees. No red sign was planted in our lawn, no bright notices on our mailbox, just a quiet day with a now accessible community pool. Curiosity led me there again. Despite the early hour, Todd was already by the water, dipping his toe in to test the temperature. He noticed me and waved. "I'm sneaking in a quick swim before work," he said cheerily, as if referencing the joke that it used to be forbidden. I laughed, remembering how that simple act, swimming in the morning, had caused so much uproar not long ago. Now it felt blissfully free. We chatted briefly about the upcoming board elections. Apparently Peter Reynolds, who distanced himself from Karen's hidden dealings, was running with a vow to improve transparency. For once, people were genuinely excited about voting in an HOA election. In an odd way, Karen's heavy-handed approach had revitalized civic engagement. By the time I returned, Jake was awake, checking messages on his phone. He gave me a questioning look. "Everything good?" "Better than ever," I said happily. "The pool is open, no padlocks, no drama, just Todd, about to dive in. Exactly as it should be." Jake nodded, relieved. "Want to come along on my next site visit in a few days? Might be fun to compare well-run public pools to what we just dealt with, where open access actually means open." I chuckled. "Sure. I can offer some tips, courtesy of my personal run-in with a rogue HOA." We both laughed, a cathartic sound. The storm had passed, leaving clarity in its wake. Over the next month, the interim board officially organized elections. Todd joined, Jenna volunteered to draft fairer bylaws, and they openly invited resident input. People were genuinely optimistic. The pool, they reaffirmed, belonged to everyone. No secrets, no hidden fees. I found myself swimming often, savoring both the quiet of early mornings and the playful weekend crowds. Each time I slipped into that blue water, I remembered how Karen had suddenly shown up at my door that early morning. How a single piece of paper imposing a fine had spiraled into such upheaval. Now, it served as a testament that if you stand firm, gather evidence, and stay united, you can restore fairness. Occasionally I caught glimpses of lingering tensions. Some neighbors who'd originally backed Karen now seemed bashful, unsure how to acknowledge what had happened. I felt no resentment toward them. Fear or misinformation can lead people to side with authority. Over time, most realized that an open communal approach benefited everyone. As for any rumored investment deal to privatize the pool, that fizzled out once the new board made it crystal clear that any purchase or conversion would require a full community vote with transparent terms. The developer apparently backed off, and no further proposals surfaced. A few months later, I discovered an old brochure in a junk drawer. The original promotional flyer that boasted a gorgeous shared pool for all residents. I lingered on it, recalling the wave of excitement Jake and I had felt. Who could have guessed that the very amenity attracting us here would become the center of such conflict? Yet if given the chance to rewind, I'd make the same choice. The turmoil tested us, but it also introduced us to neighbors who became friends, teaching us the power of collective action. I was reminded that sometimes you must push back to preserve everyone's rights. Life settled into a pleasant routine again. Jake resumed a normal inspection schedule, ironically ensuring no one else faced what we had endured. I continued my remote work, writing and editing from home, more grateful than ever for the stable environment, punctuated only by the occasional shout of kids enjoying the newly liberated pool. Now and then, I heard rumors about Karen's whereabouts. One neighbor claimed she'd bought a condo in another town and would probably impose her strict style on that HOA. Another said she'd left the state altogether. In any event, she remained a cautionary tale about how quickly power can be abused when unchecked. One bright afternoon, I lounged on a pool chair reading a paperback novel. Todd chatted with another neighbor about possible improvements, installing a splash pad for young children or hosting holiday parties around the pool. The tension that once smothered this space had lifted, replaced with optimism and camaraderie. Glancing up from my book, I watched the sun reflect on the water's surface and took a slow breath. The sense of belonging was palpable, as though we'd reclaimed something deeper than just pool access, a collective voice, a rightful stake in our own neighborhood. From across the deck, Jake was responding good-naturedly to someone asking what a state recreation inspector really does. I saw the faint smile at the corner of his mouth. I smiled to myself. In a way, the entire saga demonstrated how illusions of power can crumble once light is thrown on them. Karen's illusions thrived on secrecy. Few dared question her. But the moment her heavy-handed methods were exposed, the foundation of her plan collapsed. That evening, I capped off my day, much as it had begun, with a gentle knock on my front door. This time, though, it was Todd and Jenna carrying homemade cookies. "Just a small token of our thanks," Jenna said, offering them, "for standing up for us all, especially regarding the pool." "You have no idea how many times we almost gave in," Todd added, with a trace of relief in his voice. "Karen was just so forceful. Some of us were too intimidated to speak out, but once we saw you and Jake push back, we realized we could too." I felt a surge of gratitude and validation. "It wasn't just us," I said softly. "Everyone contributed in their own way. That's what saved the pool." They smiled and traded anecdotes about Karen's color-coded notices. I recalled, with some humor, how ironically comedic it was that Jake oversaw bigger, more complicated pools for a living, yet here we were, embroiled in a battle for a simple neighborhood swim. Reality is stranger than fiction sometimes. The cookies were delicious. After Todd and Jenna left, I noticed how quiet the night was. No accusatory signs in our yard, no threat of fines. Just a comforting hush. I locked up, switched off the living room light, and found Jake reading in bed, glasses slipping down his nose. He looked up, brow raised in amusement. "Everything all right?" Leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, I nodded, smiling serenely. "Better than all right. We've got cookies, solidarity, and a drama-free pool." He laughed, setting his book aside. "Seems like we came out on top," he said, and I agreed. Because, in simple terms, we had. The threat that hung over us for weeks was gone, replaced by a neighborhood awake to its own rights and responsibilities. Preserving something that was promised to everyone felt like no small achievement. Settling under the blankets, I let my thoughts wander over the journey. From Karen's jarring pre-dawn knock to the avalanche of violation notices, to the hush in the meeting hall the night we presented proof of her hidden deals. It was surreal how a single pool, just a chlorinated body of water, had sparked so much conflict, and yet it represented something much bigger: community, fairness, and the right to speak up. I closed my eyes, the soft whir of the bedroom fan soothing me. The next morning I could wake up, maybe go for an early dip in the pool, greet neighbors who were now more than passing strangers, and let our collective victory resonate. Because if there was one core lesson, it was that standing firm, gathering evidence, and acting together can uphold fairness in the face of intimidation. And so, the saga of Karen's iron-fisted rule over Clearwater Trail's pool ended. She'd tried to gatekeep it, demand extra funds from unwitting neighbors, and maybe orchestrate a covert real estate plan. But she hadn't expected pushback, or conscientious folks collecting evidence, or, most ironically of all, the presence of a state recreation inspector who understood the law better than she did. Once the spotlight shone on her maneuvering, it unraveled at remarkable speed. In the final tally, the pool remained ours, exactly as the original developers intended, exactly as every homeowner believed when they bought their property. And though the conflict had been stressful, it reaffirmed my faith in how a neighborhood can unite to protect what's rightfully theirs. That glimmering midday water became more than just a spot to cool off. It symbolized the power of community action against intimidation. I drifted off that night with a calm certainty that, in the days and months ahead, Clearwater trails would only grow stronger. Our once divided neighborhood forging a new identity through hard-won victory, one that embraced the true spirit of community. And next time someone knocks on my door at 7:15 a.m., I can hope it's just a friendly neighbor, perhaps inviting me out for a refreshing swim in the pool we all fought so hard to reclaim.